Nigeria is Africa's largest economy. That's after a rebasing exercise in 2014, which launched the country into over $500 billion richer in GDP. Unfortunately, between 2015 and 2016, the economy responded drastically to sensitivity occasioned by an all-time high southwards trend in global oil prices. Now, after 5 consecutive contractions, Nigeria witnessed economic recession, which stagnated growth in all sectors of the economy, spiking a spiral increase in market variables. Now, growth rate released by the National Bureau of Statistics under the years in review puts inflation at over 18.9%. GDP growth rate deepened between 2015 and 2016 from 6% to -2%, and Nigerians groaned under the heavy impact of the economic recession. But the good news is that Nigeria's economy ended the year 2017 on a very positive note, having exited the recession by the third quarter of 2017, mastering a growth rate of 0.55%. International financial institutions have predicted a brighter 2018 with growth rates projection of between 2.1% and 2.6%. Today on Late Edition, we interrogate the themes to consider in 2018 to sustain an all-inclusive economic growth. I am Claire Adilabu Abdul-Razak. Today we feature 2 guests on this first edition of our repackaged Late Edition, and the first in the new year. Abdullahi Sule is an engineer. His professional career spans across the oil industry and a little bit of politics, but he probably stands out as, for the purposes of this discussion, as a development economist. He's presently the acting group managing director of Dangote Sugar Refinery in Lagos. Now, my second guest is Amos Saka. He's also a development economist and an investment consultant. He's the managing partner and CEO, Good Ground Integrated Services Limited, and former director, investment facilitation at the Nigerian Investment Promotion Council, NIPC. Gentlemen, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, let's quickly begin by looking at the previous year, 2017. It was a year of recession. The year of recession was also the year out of recession. For you, what was spectacular about it?
Well, starting from the point of the company I run, we started there with a very, very challenging environment. We started having problems actually with FX, not knowing what the rate of FX was going to be during the period. Most of the customers buying our products were people also faced with the same situation, and so production as a whole was not determined. They didn't know what to produce or what time to produce. The biggest problem that most of the companies actually faced during the period was mostly about even knowing your cost, because we are still an import-dependent country. So most of the raw materials we imported, a lot of them based on LCs not yet paid, and the funding not yet found, in the open market or the CBN. So you could buy thinking that your exchange rate was going to be 400. By the time you found the dollar to exchange, it could be 500 or more. And as a result of that, we started without even knowing our cost. Now that is on the production side. On the sell side, we started there also very difficult with not knowing where to send the products without getting hit. We started a lot of problems with the security situation that you knew. For us in Dangote Sugar, for instance, our biggest markets were in the northwest and the northeast, apart from the major corporate customers that we had in Lagos. So even the major corporate customers we had in Lagos, a lot of them had their plants and their facilities actually in the northern part of the country. So even taking product to those places, security was a challenge. A lot of our trucks, for instance, were attacked as a result of those challenges. By the middle of the year, when the rents actually started, then we went into the biggest problem of all, the road network. Up till this moment, coming into Apapa, where a lot of our companies operate, is actually a lifetime affair. You know,
so in summary, 2017 was
a very challenging year.
Okay, let's get the views of Mr. Sakaba.
Yes, thank you very much. I think 2017 is mixed grill, in the sense, just like you rightly put it, there was recession and there was exiting from recession. Recession came up, we all know the reasons and how we went in, but the good news is that we came out of that recession marginally, but subsequent quarterly reports indicate that there is gradual process of really improving. In other words, we are recovering, you know, from the recession. And the process is sure-footed, given the statistics we are getting from 0.55 to the figure of the third quarter, which is put at, you know, about 0.9, you know. I mean, about, 1.9. Yes. So it shows that a lot of the measures that had been taken are working. And luckily, and the system is that the environment itself, the global economic environment is also favoring the country, in addition to the fiscal measures, monetary measures the government took. I see that a situation where measures such as you know, stabilizing the foreign exchange, which you mentioned, there's been relative stability in the last 3 quarters. You know, at least you can plan for purpose of planning.
Sorry to interrupt. A lot of people, economic analysts, believe that whatever happened to get us out of recession was basically spurred by a recovery in the global oil price and not policies or deliberate actions of government.
Yeah, but the oil price can go up. We have had experiences where oil prices went very high and they were not utilized. They were not put into where it matters. You know, so the issue of, yes, there's been an increase in oil price and even production quota, production level, but it takes the political will to be able to maintain that level of how you manage the economy within remember, there's tremendous pressure for resources in every sector of the economy. Our government is still able to sustain it to the point they're able to exit and sustain the recovery efforts. So to me, you can look at it from both sides of the coin. Yes, the dynamics of international oil price has supported us. The stability in Niger Delta has increased production. And we have a quota that is now reached. We are producing almost 2.1 or so million barrels per day. So I think there is something happening that way. But more importantly, what are you doing with the proceeds of that kind of income? Okay. We've seen growth in the foreign reserve. We've seen growth tremendous increase in infrastructure investment.
Okay, let me pause you. Let me get Engineer Abdullahi Sule. He has, something is happening, but it's only happening because the oil sector, is also recovering. Now, the non-oil sector, where you come in, it's just struggling, in 2017, struggled to keep up.
Yeah, but let me go back even to the oil sector, because that's my background, by the way, before I even go to the non-oil sector. In the oil sector, he has mentioned 2 things that are extremely important. So it's not correct, actually, is to say that it's just the oil prices, that are actually increasing or going up that changed the economy and made us go out of recession. That is definitely incorrect. If you look at some of the policies of government put in place, especially from CBN, for instance, the policies taken by CBN, had made it possible for us to be able to get out of all these erratic FX rate. CBN has taken a lot of decisions on that. So kudos actually goes to the management of CBN, from the CBN governor down to the management, as well as the financial monitoring committee, every time they met at the end of the month. Now, on the exchange rate and the rest of that, they are just taking also decisions right now, if you look at it, taking about the funds, that you place with the various banks. So now what the oil itself, certain policies have to be in place. The moment you have erratic situation in the Niger Delta, the government doesn't take a policy, to maintain peace in the Niger Delta. Oil prices can go as high as they can. You are not going to get that. So for Nigeria to be producing somewhere about 2.1 million barrels right now, and then the amount of gas and all our various gas plants operating, at the moment, but the LNG, the LPG situations that we are having, it also says a lot about the peace that we are maintaining in the Niger Delta that is helping. So that is on the oil itself.
But let's still on the oil side, because you raised the issue of the CBN, policies, which have, of course, contributed. Now, people are still talking about the CBN, impact of CBN having to still prop up the Naira, of course, with its interventions and the effect on the market. People are still talking about the MPR, which the CBN has still kept high, and which, of course, is affecting, the other sectors of the economy. You've also talked about the the failure of CBN to attain a convergence of, rates, FX rates. So, all of these, how have they helped the economy? How did they help the economy in 2017?
When they came up with the policy of first with the BDCs, where a lot of money was being abused, a lot of it actually going to BDCs and BDCs owned by certain individuals, which is part of the corruption that I think the gentleman was talking about, that created. So that's a policy. When they came up with restricting how much was going to go to the BDCs, that was a policy taken, which was good for the country and made it available. When they came with the two markets, the open markets, where you can now go and be able to do that, it made a lot of other companies, a lot of other foreign reserve earners to be able to bring in back the dollar. So at least now you can go to the CBN and get your dollar anywhere between 305 to 307. And you can go also to the banks and be able to get a lot of dollars at somewhere around 360. So by maintaining these two markets, making it open, it now restricted even the black market to be somewhere less than 370, in most cases. It is going to be a gradual process from what you are saying. If they match the market and they do not have sufficient dollar to make available, then we are going back to where we are seeing dollar at 500, 600 naira. So by maintaining these markets and making available most of the time, more dollar in the market, it also creates the room to be able to maintain this. Now, for the past 3-4 months, they have been able to maintain the exchange rate at somewhere between 305 to 307, maybe 308 at one point that I have seen. So I think that's a policy that they need to be commended for. So that's what I wanted to say on that one when you asked on the question. So now coming back to the area of the non-oil sector that you have mentioned, the government has been making a lot of efforts to ensure that agriculture, which is the company I manage, for instance, agriculture is an area that is highly encouraged. For instance, we import nearly all the sugar into this country from Brazil. We have 3 refineries at the moment, Dangote Sugar Refinery, Boa and Golden Sugar. All of us import our raw sugar out of Brazil, when actually it could be produced here. By it being produced here, if today Nigeria consumes 1.5 million metric tons of sugar annually, we are employing maximum about 3,000, 4,000 people in all this huge production that you have. If this was going to be from the farms that we are doing, we are talking of employing not less than 100,000 people. We are talking about actually creating job opportunities, also generating power, because, from sugar production, you also generate power. You also generate ethanol. The oil and gas you have mentioned, Nigeria currently consumes anywhere close to 40 million liters of gasoline a day. That's the one you call petrol. A day. That's what we are consuming. Most of this is not even blended with ethanol, because we don't have the ethanol. If we go into the agriculture side, where from sugar we are generating millions of liters of ethanol. From, say, cassava, for instance, we are generating ethanol, and all the other areas we are generating ethanol. We can actually blend that, in that area to be able to have a huge reduction of somewhere around 10%. In places like Brazil today, you have vehicles also that are almost 80%, ethanol driven. Today in Nigeria you have 100% of that the other way side.
Did we see a robust, government policy with regards to agriculture? Because if we're diversifying the economy, and trying to keep oil, to the background and bring agriculture back, of course, to the rightful place, did we see any robust, policy to support that? Okay.
In sugar, for instance, let me take sugar again. In sugar, and I know there is one in nearly every one of it. There has been one in rice, been one in flour, in cassava, and the rest of that. But let me take sugar, for instance. In the year 2012, the federal government of Nigeria came up with a policy through the Sugar Council called the Nigerian Sugar Master Plan. That Nigerian Sugar Master Plan provided a lot of incentives for those who are going to do this backward integration. Some of the incentives could only be enjoyed by the current producers. For instance, importation of raw sugar at a certain tariff and certain levy and duty in order to encourage them to be able to do that. That is a government policy. That approval is given by nobody but the president himself.
That's for just one product. That's just sugar.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yes, there is also rice, in that. There is also, okay, anyway,
but even with rice, with the policy, we've been able to, improve our production, local production of rice. But the price of rice, even as at year end in December 2017, is still competing with, the imported rice. So what are we talking about?
Yeah, sorry. Let me go back to the issue of CBN intervention, because that's very important. I think he's made the point, and he's operating from the position of knowledge, because CBN at a point had to identify the manufacturing sector and single it out for special allocation based on their Form M requirements.
Correct.
And that really was the magic word. And we saw that it supported manufacturing sector, it supported the growth rate recorded in that sector to up to 30% growth rate.
But did you see a corresponding growth reduction in unemployment? No.
No. You see, when we are talking of employment is beyond. In fact, during the presidential New Year speech, the president said, look, Nigeria should stop looking for jobs from government or even private sector. Private sector and government cannot supply the jobs required as at now. The important thing is to direct attention to areas where people can employ themselves and employ others. And this is doable because the economy of Nigeria is so vast, it's not even tapped at all. So there are opportunities for government to promote and create the enabling environment for such to happen. But employment, okay, look at powerful sugar, Dangote sugar, as it is. He is really our statistics. He is mentioning 100,000 jobs.
To be created.
To be created. 100,000 jobs.
Created.
Yes, no, to be created. That tells you that we have a long way to go. If we are waiting for those jobs, it will take us quite a number of years and a lot of daring policy reforms.
Can I answer her question on the employment?
But with the
on the employment,
yes.
You asked a very important question about the employment.
Yes.
Did that translate, did the CBN policy translate to any more employment? Yes. You know why? A lot of these companies we were dealing with were getting ready to shut down and actually disengage people because they were not getting foreign exchange. As a result of making the foreign exchange available, those staff were retained. Yeah. That is employment. That is one. Two, a lot of them actually have improved in production and have also employed people. We are very bad with keeping statistics in Nigeria. That is one of the problems.
Are you querying NBS statistics?
No.
Statistics puts unemployment rate as at end of 2017 at 2 digits. Double digits.
No, what I'm telling you about that is that in most cases, you see, they come up with these figures without, yes, I can query some to a certain extent, to be honest with you. The reason is that if you go to some of these private companies, how do they get these figures? They send it to us. In most cases, we have not even seen that in us, in Dangote. They will send these forms to us. We fill out the forms. We say that's how they collect these statistics. So sometimes you can question them. And I'm not saying they are all the time wrong, but I'm saying if you want to question them, yes, you can question some of them. So we have seen a lot of these companies actually re-engaging some of the staff that they had disengaged at the middle of the year. So maybe if they close the year with 2%, most likely it will have been, they will have closed the year with less than maybe minus double digits. So that's the way I think you have to look at the area of employment. But you are right. Let us do more and more activities, to encourage government come up with more policies. I'm not saying that government is doing sufficient. No, there are more that government can do in order to encourage more. But as I said, it's going to be a gradual process.
Now, the objective of government is, of course, in diversifying our economy, is to ensure that we are no longer a mono, sport economy. We
Correct.
don't really, depend on oil.
Correct.
We're now looking at, and everybody is pointing at agriculture. Is it really possible? The policies that we've seen in the previous year, and of course the programs and all that, do they point in that direction, Mr. Sakaba?
Yeah. Yes, they do point in that direction. And you see, in governance, the most important is political will. When government takes a decision to implement something and the will is there to do it, then at the level of implementation, you have challenges, you have competing pressures as a result of other issues that are beyond your control. Issues like you don't have enough revenues to fund the budget. Issues like you haven't started early enough to take care, especially because agriculture is seasonal. There are also issues of still depending on even the inputs in agriculture to be imported. So the fuel crisis, for example, we had, the foreign exchange concerns that were expressed during the early first 2 quarters of 2016 and 2015 were all pointing to, they impacted directly on every sector of the economy, because they have that direct link with other sectors of the economy. And that is why, if you have those concerns, no matter what policy you put in place, they are undermined by the inability of that sector to benefit maximally from the opportunities and the reforms. But I think because the will is there, because there's encouragement, because there's intervention from even including funding, I think, and the number of incentives, including importation of equipment and other things, is helping. But we need to look at it holistically, because there's always a connection between the sectors of the economy with each other. And once you isolate a sector and you give it attention without looking at the other sectors, like agriculture is not just farming, it includes processing.
Exactly.
It includes export.
The value chain.
The value chain must be addressed holistically, and I think this is where the missing link is. There must be a system where you bring the entire value chain in agriculture and support it at the level of, and it's not only Minister of Agri, it is interministerial. There must be a presidential taking in charge approach in this matter, in this kind of thing, where whether it's the office of the VP or whoever will coordinate all the other agencies and ministries that will support agriculture, just as we have in the power sector. Anytime they don't have gas, the thermal stations are shut down, and we have problem in this country because the Ministry of Power is not in control of the gas. And so you need some level of coordination in governance where somebody would streamline all these activities into delivering service and delivering higher productivity for the economy.
All right. I know, gentlemen, you both agreed that 2017, was a kind of mixed bag in terms of growth for us. At least we were able to get out of the recession, and we saw, the growth rate, picking up from a minus to a positive note. All right, gentlemen, let's quickly take our first short break. We'll be right back. This is late edition, and we are interrogating the themes to be considered in 2018 to spur sustainable and all-inclusive economic growth. And my guest, Abdullahi Sule, who is, of course, an engineer by profession, who's also have had career in the oil industry and is a development economist. We also have Amos Saka, who is also a development economist and an investment consultant. I forgot to add that Engineer Sule is also the presently acting Group GMD of Dangote Sugar Refinery in Lagos. Gentlemen, again, I know, let me start with Engineer Sule. You queried the statistics, that have come out of, say, the NBS. Would you also query the projections coming from international financial institutions, projecting positive growth rate of between 2.1 and 2.6, for Nigeria in 2018?
Well, you see, when you talk about the growth rate, people are just talking about a forecast, projections, sometimes the unknowns. Okay, so if you look at the projections in 2017, done in 2016, were they accurate? If you look at exactly what happened, they were not. So
that's why they're projections.
Yeah. So that's when you say, do I agree with them or not? So you have to go and find out what informs some of those projections.
Precisely.
And then what actually is given more. A lot of them are looking at growth. And for us, we look at growth. Now, before we look at growth, you have to go back to some of the comments I made earlier about 2017 being a very challenging year. I know for those who understand what Dangote Sugar Refinery as a company actually has gone through, number one, we made the best profit ever in the history of the company in 2017, with all the comments I made about the challenges. We were just voted 2 days ago as the best performing
We're going to issue you an invoice at the end of this program.
Yeah.
Please.
So as the best performing shares in the Nigerian Stock Exchange, all the challenging years. So, but that's a different interview altogether. So these are the situation. Now, did we forecast we were going to be able to do that? If you look at it, definitely not. So when you say I question that with a little bit of sentiments also, because I'm looking at the companies we deal with, and these are the biggest companies in Nigeria today. You ask questions, for instance, about where are we going, when it comes to investment. He mentioned wonderful areas about the investment, what the government is doing. Is the government really looking at true investors? If you look at it, maybe most likely not. That's the reason why we are not going there. You mentioned at agriculture, for instance. We are looking at agriculture, and we are saying that we are going to have this expansion and then have this. Take Dangote, for instance, what we are going through. Land acquisition a lot in Nigeria. Sometimes you take 3 to 4 years to acquire land for what you are trying to achieve. And there are states where we went there and spent 2 to 3 years in the process of land acquisition. At the end of the day, we didn't succeed. We had to abandon the entire plan. We didn't succeed in the land acquisition. So these are areas that the government has to look at when it comes to agriculture. Because you can't just say, I'm encouraging agriculture, go and develop agriculture. How do I acquire the land? Where is the water availability? Where is the land, the roads availability? Today, look at the roads in Nigeria. We are facing a lot of challenges with roads. So if you want people to truly invest, that's why I said, are they even looking at the true investors, those who are really going to invest? The true investors of this country will be Nigerians themselves. If we want this country to develop, forget about going to China, going to this, going to that. I'm not saying there is anything wrong with that. But those who are going to invest in this country and develop this country are the Nigerians themselves. So unless the government comes back and refocuses on that and stop wasting resources about all these places, America and the rest of that. I spent most of my working life in the US, and I know what we had to go through, investing in other countries. I've been to so many other countries, to do investment in oil and gas, Angola, Sao Paulo in Brazil and the rest of that. And I know what some of these companies actually look for when they go into those countries. And Nigeria is not the most attractive for them at the moment. They can lie to you, they can discuss politics with you, this and that, but it will take Nigerians themselves. To be able to do that.
Someone asked the question, it was very rhetorical, that we keep saying Nigeria is the investment destination point, but how much has it translated into real growth? And that's what I'm asking you, Mr. Sakaba. In terms of projections, 2.1 and 2.6, these are figures, basically figures. In terms of real growth, where do we look for the themes to consider in 2018?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think he raised some fundamental issues, but I think also, for the first time, I think government has come to that realization that unless a lot of reforms are undertaken, both institutional, policy, and regulatory especially, things will continue to be cyclical. And I think also this government has demonstrated sufficient understanding of this issue from the Presidential Advisory Committee on Ease of Doing Business and the kind of executive orders that are coming out, and even the response to these executive orders, which has found expression in considering Nigeria as the 10 most reforming economies, with up scale of 24 places in doing business ranking. So it seems to me that the political will to push through reforms is available. Now, how are these reforms generated? Are they done in consultation with the private sector, the manufacturing sector, the SME sector? What inputs are they making? And you see, I've been in government almost all my life, and I know the thinking in government is different. Luckily, I worked in the NIPC where we understand business and we understand what investors need, how they can be supported. But if you go to a typical MDA, they don't have that understanding. They think every investor is coming to take away resources from government.
Yeah, that's why.
So that attitude is affecting the reforms. And that's why government should go beyond the executive orders to ensure that they are complied, they are obeyed by the MDAs, and this monitoring and reporting system, even to the Federal Executive Council, where they review this performance every week. They are meeting. Let there be a report on performance on the executive orders, and I think this will go a long way, because look at the challenge here is about access to land. You cannot have agric revolution without giving people who have the means, the technology, and the resources, and the passion to do agriculture. If they don't have land, you can't do business on a rented land, and with the uncertainties of a hostile community.
Very good.
There are a lot of issues involved in it. So that's why I've always said there's need for a holistic look at the entire policy of government and streamlining it to involve every sector of the economy in such a way that there is effective coordination, in such a way that every ministry or agency is supporting, what every sector is doing. In other words, we should turn Nigeria into a team Nigeria for business, so that every government agency understands the language of how do we invite both local and foreign investors, how do we retain them, how do we encourage them. We have this knack of, looking for investors. But when those who are already here, what are we doing about them? There's a major disconnect between the investors who are already here, who are doing very well, what level of support, and most investors prefer those existing ones are the ones expanding. It's not as if there are new investors coming. The ones existing, if you treat them well, they will expand. They will increase productivity. They will increase employment. So it is very important we find the magic word in terms of effective coordination of government policy and streamlining reforms in the direction of priority sectors, so that they will drive the growth that we are talking about.
Fine, you just talked about priority sectors, and we're looking at sustaining whatever growth projection that have been made. So which areas of priority do you think we should be considering, and what should be the theme areas?
Okay, the number one is the one he has mentioned, about actually the implementation of all these programs, and then the need for clear understanding between the NDAs, the federal government itself, the states, and the investors. And when I say investors, like he rightly mentioned, both local as well as foreign investors. So there has to be a proper coordination between that. If you know, at one point, the federal government even had an economic team without the current investors. It was much later that the real investors in this country, the corporate world, were even invited into the economic team, when the government realized that it was impossible actually to have a proper economic team without that. So that is number one, which is the understanding. And that understanding has to go down the line, including some of the ministries, the state governments, the local government, and the communities. So once we have that understanding that we are all coming to jointly develop and grow the economy, then that is number one on that side. Now, on the other areas of focus that you have mentioned, the various infrastructure, Nigeria is still fighting power. I was a member of the Vision 2020 committee, on energy. And we had said in that committee that we were going to be able to be generating 5 megawatts of power every year from the various sources, hydro, gas, turbines, and the rest of that. Since the time we finished that in the year 2009, up till today, we had not developed additional 2,000 megawatts. Okay, so these are the other issues, because we have been ranging anywhere between that 3,500 to maybe somewhere around 5,500, maybe 6,000 maximum that we have done that. With the problem we're having on gas recently, which we are affected directly, by the way, of the Escravos line coming to Lagos, the fire that we had, which is causing now the failure in the country, then you have seen also a policy. He mentioned one important area about disconnect. Those responsible for generating power, Ministry of Power. Those responsible for giving them gas, Ministry of Petroleum. There is disconnect. This one is blaming this one is blaming the other one,
so
who is doing that.
There should be a coming together.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay, let us also look at another aspect that, is of concern, and that is, job creation. How can, a lot of people have said, look, let government hands off, let most of the, public institutions be privatized. And again, from my experience in the power sector, privatization has not been a, positive venture for us. Do you see us, adapting more of these privatization policies? Will it work for us in this year?
That's the only way to go. If you privatize, the privatization itself will create the jobs immediately. Now we have had issues with privatization, especially in the power sector, not because anything went wrong, but it's because the expectations were not managed. The people that bought the discos and the Gencos, I think they underrated the enormities of the problems that later surfaced after the purchase. And on the side of government, they had to now go. It is now that government is looking backwards to start to correct some of those distortions. For example, you buy a disco and you discover that you are not collecting revenue of up to 30% because people are doing illegal connections. And then the distribution capacity, the transmission network is not adequate enough. It's not even commensurate to the generating capacity of the country. So it got to a state, discos were rejecting power delivered to them because they lacked the capacity to distribute them. And then they lack capacity to earn revenue because they are not able to afford prepaid meters, which is necessary if you are to stop leakages in revenue. And then they are depending also largely on a system that is already having a lot of illegal connections, illegal activities, and they cannot afford it. They are already overexposed with Nigerian banks. And they raise money to pay for to buy the assets. So they have no money. They can't go to borrow money now to maintain or upgrade those assets. This is part of the challenge. So we've heard that there was an intervention for the power sector, but we don't know how it was managed. But I think it's very important that we at this stage now, government has to find a way of introducing some kind of palliatives to support that sector, because there's no way we can move forward if we don't resolve the issue of power.
If we are unable to manage to manage privatization in the power sector, what assurance do we have that if we privatize other public institutions, we will...
Remember that Nigeria's privatization of power sector is the first successful privatization of power sector of that magnitude in the whole world. No country, Brazil, India, they have been trying to do it, they are not even able to do it. But Nigeria was able to do it. But in the process of doing it, they left out some fundamentals. And I think those are the ones that are showing up now, that are throwing up now. Okay. And I think it's a lesson in exercise. But privatization is, okay, why are we not having issues in other areas?
Okay, let me pause you.
Yes.
Engineer Sule, with regards to privatization and power, I know there were private companies that got licenses to, to build refinery. And Dangote was one. What has happened?
No, with Dangote, then you are not going to succeed when you start with Dangote, because Dangote actually, talking about privatization, is currently building the biggest oil refinery in the world, in Lekki. And if you go there, it's actually a big city that is just being created in Lekki. If you go there today, the number of jobs that have been created, that's why I question about this job thing. You know, the number of jobs that have been created, the amount of development that is going there, the massive amount of machinery that has come in, the terminal that has been created, and the rest of that. So when it comes about the refinery, yes, I agree with you. There are some that have failed, when it comes to privatization, but that goes back again to the government. When government is privatizing and is given to those that they know actually don't have the resources, don't have the technical know-how to do that, and government intentionally is selling companies to those kind of people, privatization will fail. I agree with you 100%. And I will give you a practical example also. And I don't agree with the idea of saying government hands off. Government cannot completely hands off. Okay, even after privatization, government has to remain engaged until that privatization becomes successful. A good example is, has privatization of Benue Cement become successful or not to Dangote? Wonderfully successful. Today, that cement plant is producing over 4 million tons of cement annually. When the government had it, government never even produced 2 million.
What about...
No, let me tell you the one that failed. Okay? I'm trying to be fair. Okay? Yeah, I'm trying to be fair. So now let us take, for instance, where government hands off the privatization of Savannah Sugar Company to us. When the government sold Savannah Sugar Company to us through BPE and then said, okay, it's now over to you, the communities went and burnt down the entire 6,000 hectares of land because the community was not in agreement with the government. So we went there and faced problems. If you understand agriculture, it takes time before you even remove the cane that is there to start planting one, to grow it, to do that. Now, are we back on track? We had to invite the government to come back. So government came in, intervened, and started working on it. Today, I'm proud to tell you that since Dangote acquired Savannah Sugar, we had the best production actually last year.
This is not a discussion about Dangote.
You mentioned privatization.
Yes, I'm going to pause
you mentioned privatization, and that's the reason why I'm going into privatization.
Yes,
I wanted to add this issue of privatization. Actually, the BPE legal framework allows them or provides for them to monitor post-privatization activities of companies. But you see, I think maybe the disconnect is you cannot be the one selling and then be the one. They should have allowed relevant MDAs with regulatory responsibilities to take over the monitoring. After you have sold, allow the other MDAs to now regulate. And they are all there, from the tax people to Minister of Labor to all of them are involved. Okay. And that will help. But there is an internal mechanism where BPE monitors performance of privatized companies. And that report is at the level of, you are doing a report to yourself, and you are the person guilty of selling the asset. So it will be difficult to exert some level of control. And then the kind of information that was available at the time of privatization, the due diligence was based on limited information. They don't have sufficient information. And then they've not done, there are no market reports, no baseline studies to tell you that privatization, they just took over and started running.
There were studies, because I remember on this program last year, I had the immediate past director of monitoring department, and he said, look, there were reports, monitoring reports, about post-privatization, yes, and all that. But that's a different story. Let's look at the growth for 2017 and how that translated into real growth for Nigerians, because in terms of power to spend, it's not there. Prices of food, in the market are still very high. So, and I'm wondering, in 2018, that's this year, how can Nigerians, or how can our economy be inclusive? How can Nigerians feel the impact of an economy that has grown, that has improved?
Yes.
Because we're running out of time.
Yeah, yes. Actually, this is the crux of the matter. A lot of people are still questioning whether we are out of recession or not, because the impact has not yet trickled down to the ordinary person. But fundamentally, Nigeria's economic fundamentals are still there, and they have potential for growth. And they are, with the right policies that government is put in place, we might experience some rapid and sustainable growth. But growth alone is not enough. It has to translate into development. And development is is that thing that takes the inclusion, the inclusivity of growth to the ordinary people. Everybody should see the impact of that growth. And to see the impact of that growth, you have to go into what government is doing. Emphasis on infrastructure. And when you have a vibrant construction industry, whether it is railway or housing or whatever, you are creating millions of jobs in the process along the value chain.
Okay.
Yeah.
Engineer Sule, do you see, let me take it from this way. The NBS says inflation fell in 2017 for the 10th consecutive months, that's between February and November. There are projections that it's likely to drop to maybe single digit. Do you see prospects for that?
There are prospects for that. The reason why I'm telling you there are prospects for that is, one, it is going to be an election year. Okay, we are going straight now very soon into elections. He mentioned one very key point, which you started with, but I think you didn't go in there, about the power to spend. You know, the reason why Nigerians do not even know whether we're out of recession or not is because the power to spend is still very, very low. You know, so Nigerians don't have cash with them in their hands. A lot of government is still in control of a lot of money. But by the time we go into election year, more money is available. We create some of this construction industry employment that he has mentioned. More people are engaged, so people have more money to spend, and the rest of that. You will see that growth, and you will see reduction in inflation. So I will not be surprised if it goes to 9% or maybe 9-point-something%, you know, somewhere around there. So, but the indications are there. You know, just yesterday I was seeing that our Bonny Light has actually gone beyond $68 per barrel. You know, so these are also good signs. We have mentioned our major source of income, you know, which is the oil. You know, we are producing 2.1, and the GMD had mentioned that very soon we are going to go into 2.2, 2.3. Gas production has improved. We said we produced nearly all our rice in Nigeria last year, you know, things like that. So these are indications that you are seeing. You are going to also see reduction in prices of products, you know, and we have seen that starting from the third quarter. You know, most of the produce that we have in the market, you know, being it sugar, rice, or rice, we have seen a slight decline in the prices, and those are indications.
We're quickly rounding off now. I'd just like you to speak briefly on the electioneering year, 2018, and the fact that the 2018 appropriation budget is still pending at the National Assembly. Again, are we going to see, you know, another year of underspending of budget?
Yes, I think this is very important. 2018 is a year prelude to the election year. And so people expect that the first 6 months should be that of action. Whatever government has to do to support the economy, this is the time to do it. But again, that depends on how the National Assembly are able to finish with their processing of the budget, because if they're able to do it by February, I think it is good enough to start the implementation in earnest, especially because of the timing. Believing that government itself knows it will face the electorate, so they need to have something to tell, the good stories to tell. So there will be, I think, a tremendous improvement in the disbursements of funds and to finance the activities. If you look at the rate at which contracts are approved at the Federal Executive Council level, it tells you the sense of urgency. It tells you also that the National Assembly is under pressure to also conclude the processing of the budget so that we can get running. I think there's every indication that the next 6 months are very defining as far as
very defining 6 months in 2018. But briefly, and the last one to Engineer Sule, let's speak to the capacity of our economy, you know, to carry the debt to, you know, what would I say, debt to deficit burden. we have a deficit of about 2.0 trillion naira, and now half of that is to be sourced, domestically, and the other half externally. Do we have the capacity to carry that?
Well, the indications that will give us the capacity are there. When companies are going out borrowing or government is going out borrowing, we look at the indications that do they have the capacity to pay. So what we are seeing, as I just mentioned about prices of oil and our production are there, they are actually giving the lenders comfort that, okay, yes, these people can pay. These people can generate the revenue to be able to pay us back. So for that reason, they have the capacity. We should be able to do that. So I think when you talk about capacity, yes, I think we have the capacity and things are going in the right direction.
Right, Engineer Sule Abdullahi, presently acting Group Managing Director of Dangote Sugar Refinery, as well as Amos Saka, who's also the Managing Partner and CEO Good Ground Integrated Services Limited, former Director Investment Facilitation at the NIPC. Gentlemen, thank you for joining me on the program.
Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure.
All right, and ceteris paribus, if all things being equal, 2018 promises to be a good year, and it could be the year that will bring in a breath of fresh air for many Nigerians. That's our program for today. I am Claire Dilabo Abdulrazak. Thank you for joining me. Goodbye.